Briefly about the murder of someone named Ryan Carson. He's the 32-year-old Antifa activist who was stabbed to death around 4 a.m. in Brooklyn on Monday. And I said that, among other things, his killing shows the importance of knowing your surroundings and taking proactive steps to protect yourself and your family. Now, leftists can call that whatever they want to call it, stereotyping, racial profiling, white supremacy, whatever. The truth is that it's common sense to get out of a situation when you assess that you are unsafe. And if an agitated young male in a hoodie on a street corner starts kicking mopeds and ranting and raving in front of you, as Ryan Carson's killer did, then you don't stare at him. You don't tell him to chill or shove him several times in the chest, especially when he says, "I'll kill you." What you do is you get yourself and your loved ones as far away as you can. If somebody calls you a racist because of that, then that's their problem. It's better to be alive and quote-unquote racist than dead and tolerant. Now, over the last 48 hours, though, it's become very clear that the murder of Ryan Carson is about much more than what Ryan Carson did or failed to do at 4 a.m. on Monday morning in Brooklyn. The response to Carson's killing from all corners of the left, from Carson's friends to local politicians to the media, doesn't simply tell us that leftists are hopelessly naive and ignorant of very real threats to their lives. It does tell us that, but it also tells us a lot more, because this is a bigger story than that, it turns out. Now, the response to Ryan Carson's killing also makes it clear that leftists simply don't care about human life or humanity in general. We know that because they're not even going through the motions of demonstrating some pretense of concern for Carson, much less the policies that led directly to his death. And what this means is that leftism is collectivism in every sense and at every level. It views its own adherents not as people, but as replaceable, fungible cogs in the revolution. It uses its own followers as essentially cannon fodder in the culture war. One death is irrelevant. It's collateral damage. Now, we could debate when this began or whether it's always been the case with leftism, but it's impossible to dispute that the left is openly admitting this now. Consider the fact that within hours of Ryan Carson's death, his left-wing friends set up a GoFundMe. And that part is not unique. You know, this happens a lot. Somebody dies and next thing you know, there's a GoFundMe. But the thing is that they didn't create this GoFundMe to cover funeral costs or to help Carson's family. Instead, Carson's friends set up a GoFundMe for themselves so that they could skip work in order to mourn. That's not an exaggeration. It's precisely what they wrote. Here's the pitch on their GoFundMe page. Quote, "We are a collective of Ryan's close friends reeling from a brutal loss. We're asking for your help on behalf of his partner in easing the burden and stress of this horrifying situation so that we can have space and time to grieve and remember Ryan. Immediate needs are to offset the costs of working class people taking time off of work to properly mourn." So they want to take a vacation. They want vacation days. And they want to be paid. They want a paid vacation, and they need to crowdfund for that, crowdfunding some bereavement leave, even though they're not even related to the guy. Like, forget the family, forget the funeral, apparently. Just pay them to sit around and mourn. I mean, think about this. Their friend died. This all happened, early Monday morning is when he was killed. So, and the GoFundMe was up very quickly. So, their friend died. I mean, brutally, horrifically, stabbed to death in the heart, bleeding to death on a sidewalk, right? And the first thing they think to do is start a GoFundMe to raise funds for themselves, which means that someone in the friend circle had to suggest this almost immediately after he died. Did you hear Ryan was killed? It's awful. You know, we should start a GoFundMe. Oh, for funeral costs? No, for us. So we could take some time off work. And then everyone else apparently agreed to it. It's incredible. But Ryan's comrades didn't stop there, rather. For good measure, they also told media outlets that if he were alive, Ryan would feel bad for his killer. As the Daily Mail reported, quote, "Brooklyn activist Ryan Thorson Carson would feel sorry for the violent teenager who stabbed him to death and think of him as a victim of a broken system, say friends." Unfortunately, Ryan Carson could not be reached for comment on this. And although, if we're being completely honest, his friends are probably right. On social media before his death, Carson celebrated violence directed at police officers. He called the torching of a Minneapolis police station, quote, "really good." He cheered when Rush Limbaugh died, saying, quote, "hell yeah." He also threatened an elected official, saying that he wanted to, quote, shove this little effing nerd in the locker where he belongs. At the same time, Carson pretended to be a compassionate person when he was talking about violent thugs and drug addicts who he wanted to have constant state-funded access to narcotics. So the criminals who terrorize entire cities are the good guys, according to Ryan Carson. But the talk radio hosts and politicians who disagree with him, on the other hand, well, they deserve to die. Now, as depraved an ideology as that is, this is what resonates on the left now. Carson's friends value that ideology more than the memory of their dead friend. They want to promote the very same policies, defunding the police, legalizing injection sites, putting the mentally ill homeless back on the streets. They want to lean into those policies that got Carson killed in the first place. That's because they don't care about him. They care about the revolution. Now, you might have heard claims on social media that Carson's girlfriend, who was with him when he was killed, Claudia, there have been reports on social media that she was not cooperative with police in the hours after her boyfriend's death. And we can't confirm that, so I don't know if that's true or not. Certainly, if it's true, it would be in keeping with Claudia's social media posts where she says that all cops are bastards. But here's what we do know. According to the New York Daily News, Claudia somehow mispicked, quote unquote, mispicked her boyfriend's killer in a lineup. And she's the only eyewitness to the crime. She saw it happen right in front of her from just a few feet away. But she reportedly misidentified the person who did it. Now, without seeing all the people in the lineup, it's hard to make anything out of that. Eyewitnesses are also notoriously unreliable, but it is another interesting detail to note, all the same. Politicians in New York don't appear to be interested in getting to the bottom of any of this or making sure that these sort of things don't happen again. Like Carson's friends, they're motivated solely by ideology. So take a look at so-called tributes to Ryan Carson from New York State Senator Julia Salazar, or Public Advocate Jumaine Williams, or Councilmember Sandy Nurse, or State Senator Jabari Bridgeport, or State Representative Emily Gallagher. In all of these tributes that have been pouring in, none of them talk exactly about how Carson died or anything like that. Instead, they all mindlessly tell people to continue practicing his brand of left-wing activism. Salazar, for example, eulogized Carson by talking about the importance of humane drug policy. Williams went on about the need for environmental justice. They're skipping over any form of self-reflection about why Ryan Carson is dead in favor of repeating their talking points. It's like callous and craven doesn't even begin to describe this. Of course, wherever there's callous and craven behavior, there's also the corporate media, and they've also been working overtime to obscure as many facts as possible about this Antifa foot soldier's unfortunate demise. In the hours after Carson's murder, several outlets, including the New York Daily News and the New York Post, refused to provide any kind of description for the suspect, even though we could see it on security camera footage, so we all knew some of the basic details of his physical description. The New York Daily News, for example, called the killer a, quote, unhinged stranger. The article later describes the murderer as a belligerent stranger. But there's no mention of any kind of description, even though the article cites police sources who have clearly seen the surveillance footage showing the murder. So this is deliberate. Either the police or the media or Carson's girlfriend decided to hide some of the information. There's no getting around that. And as incredible as that is, it gets worse. Somehow, in a development that's unprecedented in New York's storied history of perp walks, this cover-up continued even after police arrested Carson's alleged killer. Yesterday, when police arrested the suspect, who allegedly stabbed Carson to death on the street, CBS News made the editorial decision to blur the alleged killer's face. They deliberately hid his identity. Watch this.
This is footage of the man police say they were looking for. He has not yet been identified, but we are blurring his face at the moment while charges are pending. We watched again as all of this went down. More than a dozen officers were around when it happened before entering a home here on Lafayette Avenue.
I mean, it's amazing. Like, to be perfectly clear, the suspect that police arrested is an 18-year-old adult by the name of Brian Dowling. There is no conceivable reason to blur his face in this context. The excuse from CBS, which appears to be, well, this adult murder suspect hasn't been formally charged yet, so therefore you don't get to see his face. This has never been used by any major media outlet in the history of this country, as far as we can tell. It's never been used by CBS. Thousands of times they have put footage of people getting arrested on TV, and they have never blurred the face. They certainly didn't do that with Daniel Penny. Daniel Penny didn't kill anyone in cold blood. He's not a murderer. He saved people on a subway car from getting violently attacked. Which, by the way, you remember that in that case, Jordan Neely was going crazy on a subway. Daniel Penny intervened, and we're told that Jordan Neely, he was not a threat to anyone. He wasn't waving a gun around. Well, you see in the case of Ryan Carson how quickly it goes from belligerent guy screaming to stabbing someone to death. Okay, in the span of seconds, Brian Dowling went from screaming on a street corner to stabbing a man to death. That's how quickly that happens. People always say, happy dog, happy life. Well, I say it all the time. It's the mantra I live by. And if that's really the case, you need to be giving your dog Rough Greens. Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, the founder of Rough Greens, is dedicated to improving the health of every dog in America. Before I started feeding my dog Rough Greens, I had no idea that dog food is dead food. It contains very little nutritional value. Think about it. Nutrition isn't brown, it's green. Well, let Rough Greens bring your dog's food back to life. Rough Greens is a supplement that contains all the necessary vitamins, minerals, probiotics, omega oils, digestive enzymes, and antioxidants that your dog needs. You don't have to go out and buy new dog food. You just sprinkle Rough Greens on their food every day. Dog owners everywhere are raving about Rough Greens. It supports healthy joints, improves bad breath, boosts energy levels, and so much more. We are what we eat, and that goes for dogs too. Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black is so confident Rough Greens will improve your dog's health. He's offering my listeners a free Jumpstart trial bag, so your dog can try it. A free Jumpstart trial bag can be at your door in just a few business days. Go to roughgreens.com/Matt or call 844-ROUGH-700. It's ruffgreens.com/Matt or call 844-ROUGH-700 today. These days, I'm constantly traveling, being on the road as much as I am. I don't sleep well at night. I know it's because the hotel sheets are not as comfortable as my Cozy Earth sheets at home. Cozy Earth sheets are the softest, most luxurious sheets I've ever owned. My wife and I have their white bamboo sheets on our bed. Those bamboo sheets are temperature regulating, helping us sleep great every night. If you're a hot sleeper and your spouse is a cold sleeper, you're going to need these sheets. Cozy Earth offers an array of sizes and 11 colors to match your unique style and preferences. Their sheets are made to withstand the test of time. My Cozy Earth sheets get softer and softer with every wash. Don't just take my word for it. They have over 5,000 happy customer reviews on their site. What are you waiting for? Cozy Earth offers a 100-night guarantee, so there's no harm in trying it. Invest today in a good night's sleep. Right now, you'll save 40% off your next purchase with promo code Walsh40 at CozyEarth.com. That's promo code Walsh40 at CozyEarth.com. Did Daniel Penny save people on the subway from the same fate? It's quite possible. And yet, even before Daniel Penny was outrageously charged with any crime, news outlets had no problem putting his face everywhere. Before he was arrested. What explains the different treatment? Well, of course, Daniel Penny is white and Brian Dowling is black. That shouldn't matter, but when corporate media makes everything about race, it's hard not to notice. And more to the point, Daniel Penny was a law-abiding citizen. He served his country in the Marines. Then he exercised his right of self-defense and his right to defend others around him. So naturally, they'll want to shame him at every opportunity. Brian Dowling, on the other hand, he did exactly what leftists wanted him to do. If what authorities are saying is true, he contributed nothing to society. Instead, he committed a bunch of crimes, behaved like a lunatic, and terrorized everybody around him. In fact, shortly before he murdered the Antifa activist in Brooklyn, Dowling was allegedly involved in other kinds of incidents. Let's watch this.
What we've learned about 18-year-old Brian Dowling is that there appears to have been a summons from last year for disorderly conduct, and that just a couple months ago, after Dowling was in an argument with his girlfriend at her apartment, he was breaking things, and it actually led to his aunt calling 911 and describing him as emotionally disturbed. There's a lot of thoughts that maybe there's a mental health aspect to it, but certainly it is a brutal murder that happened with this man stabbed to death in front of his own girlfriend.
So instead of throwing Brian Dowling in an asylum where he apparently belonged, leftist policies ensured that he wouldn't spend a day in any kind of institution. The fact he may have killed a leftist is unfortunate in their eyes, but they don't really care. A little bit of friendly fire in their view, but shouldn't distract from their agenda. Now, we've been seeing this a lot lately. The other day, I mentioned the brutal murder of a 26-year-old white left-wing tech CEO in her luxury apartment building in Baltimore. The CEO, named Pava Lepere, was an avowed leftist. She had BLM propaganda all over her social media feeds. She seemed to really harbor an irrational hatred towards white men. How did she die? Well, she let a black guy she didn't know into her apartment building, and then she got into an elevator with him. The surveillance footage shows all of this. Lepere's mangled dead body was found on the rooftop of her apartment a few days later. Now, if you were covering this story, and pretty much every news station in the Baltimore area has covered it, then you'd think you'd at least want to inform viewers of exactly how Lepere was murdered. But that's not what's happened. So here's one example of local news coverage of Lepere's death. This is from Fox St. Louis, and I want you to notice what is not mentioned here.
We have new developments surrounding the investigation into the woman who was killed inside an apartment complex near Mount Vernon. Well, city police are now saying they found the body of EcoMap CEO Pava Lepere. Lepere inside the complex that was once the historic Congress Hotel. Investigators say there were signs of blunt force trauma. Detectives were originally called to the building after someone reported the 26-year-old missing. Police are asking anyone with information that could help solve this case to contact them.
So a lot of reports are like this. They say that she was killed in her apartment building, but they don't tell you how the killer got inside. And that's a curious omission when you think about it. Because if you really cared about Pava Lepere, or even if you just cared about accuracy in journalism, you'd think that maybe that would be one of the first things you mention. Pava Lepere let this killer into her building. She died because she was too welcoming. She was too trusting. She was too tolerant, too naive. She died because she didn't make stereotypical assumptions. Why not tell that story to the public? Now, the omission is particularly notable given recent history. It wasn't all that long ago that the media told us that unless we allow every random black guy into our apartment buildings, then we're racist and we should lose our job. So here's a story that you almost certainly don't remember. It's from the dark ages of 2018. And that year, a white woman named Hillary Thornton decided to block a black man from entering her apartment building. Hillary had cracked the door to let her dog out. Then an unknown black guy tried to enter the building, and Hillary said that she wouldn't allow him inside. What happened next? Well, the entire national news media branded Hillary Thornton as a racist, and she was fired from her job. Watch.
We are hearing the other side of a story that's making national headlines. A white woman inside a downtown loft building not letting a black man inside Friday night has hit social media and gone viral.
And the woman in the video says he didn't have a key fob to get in and forced his way inside. She reached out to me to tell her side of the story after being called a racist and receiving death threats. It's an exclusive interview you will see only on Fox 2 tonight.
You're blocking me
into my building.
Okay, and it's my building as well, so I need you to get out my way.
Okay.
This is the viral video of Hillary Thornton trying to stop Darian Tolles from entering the Elder Shirt Lofts just off Washington in the city. Thornton wanted people to know her side of what happened.
So when I noticed an individual that I did not know, my only intent was to follow the direction that I had been given by our condo association board members repeatedly, and that is to never allow access to any individual that you do not know.
Thornton showed us several emails from the association stating what residents should do when dealing with a situation like this. Hillary says Dorian said he was trying to get into the building as she had the door cracked as her dog went to the bathroom.
And I simply asked if he lived there. Because the direction from the condo association is so repeated that if you don't know the person, you do not let them in.
Thornton adds she told him she couldn't let him in, then asked if he had a key fob.
That's the only indicator that any resident has that they live in that building. He would not answer me.
So Hillary Thornton's life was destroyed because she did the right thing. She did what her condo association told her to do. She also did what common sense tells you to do. You got someone who you don't recognize in the building, doesn't have a key fob, won't even tell you that they live there. Don't let them in. I wouldn't. Pava Lepere, on the other hand, did what the left and corporate media demanded. And now she's dead because of it. And none of the activists who gave her that horrible advice, none of the media outlets that relentlessly attacked Hillary Thornton are acknowledging any of that. Like Ryan Carson's friends, they don't care. They're worried instead about the Cultural Revolution. They don't care about the innocent people who die as a result. You might have noticed that there have been several other prominent examples recently of leftist activists dying horrible deaths because of left-wing policies. This is becoming more and more common, and with every new tragic example, the responses from the left is always the same. It's detached, it's self-absorbed, completely focused on politics. All of them, corporate media, politicians, the foot soldiers in Brooklyn, they all want their ideology to win. That's all they care about. People do not matter to them. Human life doesn't matter to them. The higher the body count, the more forcefully they'll clamor for social justice. Every fatality is more evidence that they're right somehow. What they'll never admit is that Ryan Carson and Pavel Lepere, many more victims like them, have already experienced the inevitable consequences of this suicidal, insane ideology. And precisely for that reason, no one will ever hear from them again. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.